The master wants me to know everything she said of him.
Who exactly is your master?
He has many names.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In the first video of October, my favorite time of the year. Today we're looking at a show, Penny Dreadful. I had heard of this show but had no idea it had such a large focus on vampires and a really interesting story behind them. A story that may involve Lucifer, his brother, and the war in heaven.
Do you believe there is a demi-monde, Mr. Chandler? A half-world between what we know and what we fear.
Penny Dreadful first premiered in 2014 and lasted 3 seasons, ending in 2016. The show was created by John Logan. Josh Hartnett plays Mr. Talbot. You might recognize him as Eben from 30 Days of Night. Penny Dreadful involves dark fantasy, gothic fiction, horror, and a lot of homages to classic characters like Dracula, Dr. Frankenstein, his monster, the Wolfman, Dr. Jekyll, Dorian Gray, and more. The show's entire cast is amazing, and I think my favorite is Rory Kinnear, who plays Frankenstein's creature, and some other characters. Let's first take a look at how vampires were created. Then we can look at the events that take place in the show.
Everlasting, perpetual life, sustained by feeding on the souls of others.
The story of how these vampires were created starts in heaven. God and all of his angels are existing in harmony. Almost. The war among angels was started because God chose Jesus to be mankind's savior instead of Lucifer, causing him to rebel and try to take heaven's throne for himself. This started the war in heaven, and 1/3 of angels followed Lucifer in his rebellion. And so when Lucifer was defeated and cast out of heaven, so were they. Some versions of the story say Lucifer was cast to hell, and others say he was cast to earth. This is where Penny Dreadful puts their interesting spin on things. Lucifer actually has a brother. This brother shared in Lucifer's fate of being cast out of heaven, but there's a difference. Lucifer was cast into hell, becoming the first demon, a spirit, master to all nightcomers, satanic witches that have some similar abilities to vampires. Lucifer's brother, instead of hell, was cast to earth and was still a being of flesh. His name is Dracula, forced to walk to earth as an immortal. One brother sent to hell to feed on the souls of the dead. The other sent to earth to feed on the flesh and blood of the living. Some people think that Dracula and Lucifer might be 2 halves of the same being and were split into 2 when they were cast out of heaven.
She is with him. She is home.
Dracula, a fallen angel, also known as the Beast, the Dragon, Amun-Ra, Vampire, and Dr. Alexander Sweet. As Lyle says, his name is Legion, for he is many. He is the strongest and progenitor to all vampires. After being cast down to earth, he began creating other vampires in his own image. Under Dracula, the strongest of the vampires are the master vampires. They are very rare and the show never tells exactly how they were created, but they are the oldest of their species and their appearance is inhuman. Blood red eyes, claws, a mouthful of fangs, no hair, and their body is covered with an exoskeleton. In the show, they perform an autopsy on one of these master vampires. After cutting it open, they find occult hieroglyphics tattooed underneath, maybe giving some evidence to where these master vampires originated, Egypt. And since one of Dracula's names is Amun-Ra, and he's spoken about in Egyptian hieroglyphics, it's very likely. The glyphs found on the vampire's skin were said to be over 3,000 years old, and these creatures show no signs of aging. Finding dozens of dead bodies is usually a good sign of vampires in the area. One master vampire is found sleeping under a mass of bodies and its lower vampires around as bodyguards. One of these ancient vampires was seen living in an area underground, and then later made a home on a plague ship. They seem to spend most of their time either feeding or sleeping. Master vampires have super strength, able to send a human flying through the air effortlessly. They can also move very fast, but not so fast that you can't see them. And they're very agile, able to scale walls and ceilings. Vampires have something in their saliva that prevents the blood from clotting, making it easier to feed. Abraham Van Helsing named this phenomenon after his wife, calling it Hannah's wink. These vampires do have some supernatural or magic-like abilities. Firstly, they can shapeshift. A lower vampire was able to hide her vampiric features and appear human again. Dracula's shapeshifting abilities seem to be more advanced because he can take the form of other humans, as well as mist, a wolf, a bat, and possibly more. Master vampires have the ability to give their blood to humans, and it will turn them into psychotic familiars who crave blood. These familiars will do anything for their master and protect them at all costs. Master vampires like to surround themselves with infected vampires and familiars. Master vampires can only control humans by giving them their blood like this, but Dracula seems to be able to possess people and other vampires. Dracula can also control animals such as wolves, which is unique to him. What are infected vampires? They have 2 fangs, pale skin, and red eyes. These lower vampires are still quite strong and agile, but do not possess superhuman abilities to the level of the master vampires. Lower vampires could be comparable to a very strong human. As we see, humans are able to fight them in hand-to-hand combat with some success. When Dracula turned a girl named Mina, she became one of these lower vampires. This proves to become a master vampire, some extra ritual or magic must be used. It's also important to note that there's a difference between lower vampires and familiars. Lower vampires have been bitten and turned into a vampire. Familiars have just been given vampire blood, which puts them under a kind of mind control to carry out tasks for their master. A vampire will have pale skin and red eyes, but a familiar will have pale skin and these faded, discolored eyes instead. Vampire blood also seems to slowly turn familiars more psychotic until they can think of nothing but blood and their master.
Gifts from the master. All the night creatures coming out to play.
Sir Malcolm was bit by a vampire, but they cauterized the wound and he did not turn. Not sure if this was just a fluke, or maybe the wound was only superficial, so we didn't get any or enough of the infected blood or saliva in his system. Like all vampires, the ones from Penny Dreadful have their weaknesses. Dracula, master vampires, and lower vampires have the same weaknesses. Sunlight does not harm Dracula, similar to the original novel. However, during the day, he will be weaker, and he will not be able to shapeshift into any of his other forms. Other vampires probably suffer this same weakness from the sunlight, so they prefer the night. I've always wondered if vampire mythology involving sunlight was at all influenced by the writings of Dante. In Dante's Divine Comedy, an angel says that in hell, the sun is silent, and those who are damned may not look upon it. It also says that the sun represents God's love, and if vampires really are evil, then it would make sense why sunlight is harmful to them. Especially in the case of Penny Dreadful, considering the vampires are descended from 2 fallen angels. I had this thought because while I was working on finishing Penny Dreadful, I also watched Wendigoon's video on Dante's Divine Comedy, which if you like stuff about heaven and hell, his series is amazing. These vampires are not weak to silver, garlic, or holy water as far as we know. But in this one scene, a master vampire tries to come into Miss Ives' room, and when it sees a crucifix on the wall, it recoils and immediately leaves. It's not clear if the cross would have any real physical effect on them, like burning their skin. But since they are descended from a fallen angel, holy symbols could definitely hold some power over them. But other than this little occurrence, no one in the show uses a cross to repel a vampire. They seem to fear holy objects, but they also seem to fear pure evil. Vanessa Ives is the reincarnation of Amunet, the mother of darkness. She is able to use different kinds of dark magic, and when she does, the vampires fear it. Even Dracula, the fallen angel, cowers in fear when she speaks the devil's tongue, also known as Verbi Diablo. Her power is so strong that the devil himself curls up in fear, though he seems to currently be in a weakened state, as said by Dracula. One of the vampire's most important weaknesses is the Wolf of God, something Dracula talked about in his writings. There is more than one werewolf, but there is only one Wolf of God. Werewolves seem to be able to easily overpower vampires and kill them with ease, but unfortunately, we never get to see Dracula and the Wolf of God have a proper showdown. We never find out exactly how, but presumably the Wolf of God would have some extra ability to kill Dracula, which is why he fears the wolf. Maybe, similar to the Van Helsing movie, the blood of the Wolf of God may be the only thing that can kill Dracula, or it might be a weakness to him at least. Aside from the supernatural stuff, these vampires can be killed with plain old-fashioned bullets or melee weapons, even Dracula himself. They have advanced healing and can recover from almost any wound that does not damage their heart or brain. If you can manage to stab or shoot them in the brain or heart, even a master vampire will be killed. So I guess since destruction of the brain would kill them, fire could work as well. If someone can manage to kill a master vampire, then all vampires it turned will also die. This probably means that if someone were able to kill Dracula, that all vampires would die.
And your name's known to me as well.
One of them at least. They are many, my names.
Dracula looks very healthy for a vampire with normal eyes and skin and no fangs. This human form is him using his shape-shifting ability. It's said that he has an inhuman form, but we never get to see it. You could assume that it might be similar to the master vampires though, since it's said that he created more vampires in his own image. It makes me wonder if Dracula was cursed to look inhuman when he was cast out of heaven, or if that's what he looked like as an angel. We never get to see Lucifer's true form either, assuming he even has one. During the show, Dracula and Lucifer have the same goal, to make Vanessa Ives their bride. Lucifer tries to possess her but is cast out by her dark magic, so he must try to pursue her in other ways, sometimes possessing others to communicate with her. When Lucifer possesses someone, their eyes turn black and their shadow will be that of a snake. Dracula's shadow, on the other hand, can appear as a swarm of bats. Dracula is a being of flesh and can assume the form of a charming doctor to try to romance her. A woman in the show warns Vanessa that the devil will not come by force. He will seduce you and manipulate you.
Master does not want. She is already his bride, his beloved.
You may be asking, why would Lucifer and Dracula want to make some random girl their bride? Well, this is because she's not so random. She is a very powerful witch. But not only that, she is the reincarnation of Amunet, mother of all darkness. There is an Egyptian myth that says if Amunet and Amun-Ra, aka Dracula, were to join together, then they would bring about the apocalypse. All light would end and darkness would shroud the world. The hidden ones would come out to rule, and the very air itself would be pestilence. During the show, this poison air kills thousands of people a day when it first arrives, and if allowed to stay, would probably eventually kill all living creatures.
A place in the shadows, rarely seen but deeply felt.
The Egyptian myth in the show speaks of a prophecy of Amun-Ra seeking Amunet, and both Lucifer and Dracula refer to Vanessa as Amunet, which makes me wonder if technically both brothers are Amun-Ra. This would lend credence to the idea that they were once one being, but that's just a theory. Dracula wants to fill the world with his kind. Lucifer wants to destroy it. But they both have the same end goal, to conquer heaven and topple God from his bloody throne for what he did to them. And they need Vanessa to do it, but only one can have her. Dracula wants her flesh, his bride. Lucifer wants her soul. Later in the show, we get to see a conversation between Lucifer and Dracula, both appearing as an orderly from the mental hospital. Lucifer cowers in fear in the presence of his earthbound brother. Lucifer says, "The eating of flesh? The drinking of blood? More beast than spirit you are. Such a need you have for the earthly powers." And Dracula says, "And so I am made strong, impotent by the spoils of my domain, while you, anemic, feed on dust and superstition, the abject supplication of the weak and ignorant. If they cease to believe in you, do you even exist?" At this remark, Lucifer looks worried. "They won't believe in you forever, brother. We live in a mighty age of science and faithlessness. You're fading to insignificance even as I look at you." This conversation is a good insight to the relationship the two former angelic brothers share, one of contempt.
So long it's been, brother. Not long enough, brother.
Dracula said he was made strong by the spoils of his domain. He's talking about blood. He has a lot of blood to feed on, so he has become strong and stayed that way. While Lucifer, on the other hand, seems to be in a weakened state. Dracula says he's fading to insignificance in front of him. He also remarks, if they cease to believe in you, do you even exist? This sounds like Lucifer's power comes from people's belief in him. Dracula said he feeds on dust and superstition. Superstition would be a cult belief, but I think dust is referring to someone's soul. I guess since Dracula feeds on flesh and blood, the soul might seem like dust to him. Vanessa does get bitten by a vampire. Her eyes never changed though, so I don't think she became a vampire, but I still think the bite might have changed her in some way. When Vanessa is killed, the curse of the apocalypse seems to end and the poison fog goes away. However, Dracula and Lucifer are still very much alive, and will now have to wait possibly thousands of years for another reincarnation of Amunet. If you haven't seen Penny Dreadful, I would definitely recommend it. I think I would have to put it in my top 3 vampire shows. I seem to enjoy shows that tie vampires in with heaven and hell. I have to commend the show on how they were able to weave the stories of so many iconic characters together in an enjoyable way. And I always enjoy when a vampire show or movie leans more on horror. I really commend shows that end when the story is over and they don't try to drag it on for more money. Penny Dreadful ended when the story was over. Plot points from the first season are resolved in the third, and for the most part it feels like a proper ending. That was one of the reasons I enjoyed The Strain so much. Because it had such clear direction, it felt like a long movie rather than a show. If there's any other shows, movies, or video games you think I should cover, please leave them in the comments below. I always enjoy reading your suggestions. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and maybe subscribe if you haven't. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.